What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the altar again, and this time we are here with Roman, aka Bizarre of Bizarrekult. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, of course, man. It's so great to have you here. I got to tell you, your newest album, Den Tapte Krigen, which is coming out in 2023. Definitely one of the, for me, one of the most anticipated albums to go into the new year with. What was the sort of thought process going into the making of this album? Was it kind of just like picking up where you left off after V Overlevde, or was this kind of like a new beginning and new territory for Bizarre Cult?
Well, I mean, basically, it's like when we were recording the Overlevda, because this was originally material that I composed like 2009, 2010, which we simply decided, okay, let's actually make it out. And then when we were done with recording, I just got a new spark, and so I just started working on the new material immediately. And then it was right in the Corona years, so there was like a lot of home office and being isolated from everyone. And yeah, so I had a lot of walks and hikes in the forests and areas around here in Oslo. So I was all the time, having demos on my phone in the headphones and just, create the lyrics. They just came in themselves basically when I was out most of the time. So it was very, very creative and very special, very interesting process for me.
Mentioning that you got this idea from cultivating these ideas in the forests of Norway, because it seems like, during the Corona years, we were all in isolation and solitude. But when you're in the forests, in a way, is that like a different type of solitude in a way, where like when you're more surrounded by nature, or is it even solitude at all when you're in the forest? That's such a spiritual place, and the nature that's involved in there, that's life within itself.
Well, I mean, it's like I think I'm quite lucky because I don't live in the city, but I live really like outside the city. So then it's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I'm in the forest. And most of the time, if you go not on the paths that everybody goes, it's like you're more or less alone, and then you become very sensitive to everything around. Basically, you notice more. You pay attention to how the trees look like and how the things are. So you are very attached to nature in a way, because everything becomes so much interesting when there's nobody and just you kind of exploring it. And then even if you have music in the headphones, it's still like, it's you are very focused on how the path looks, where do you step, and what is around you. So it's really interesting. And sometimes I had very interesting encounters like deers, like when I was like running in the forest like 7 a.m. And then suddenly you encounter a deer in the forest. It's very, it's very impressive moment, very like, I don't know, very personal. And suddenly you see an animal and this, you cross the path, you just have 2, 3 seconds, you see them in the eye, then they just run away because they are still scared of you. But, you feel so much, I don't know, enlightened by this presence of something else, not just people.
Does it almost feel, because like when is it almost like you're observing the nature and that's kind of like your source of inspiration in a way, or is it just being present there, where like it kind of makes you look with inward and allows you to sort of like seek within your own heart in an easier way?
Yeah, it's more like the second because I'm not in the lyrics. It's not about nature or let's say society or let's say the planet in a way. It's more like reflecting on what you are, where you are, what have you done, where you have been, experience that you have. And I think this context when you are just detached from what normally your family and work and all that stuff, when you are there in the forest, when you kind of feel natural, and then you submerge with your thoughts in things that have just happened, or maybe it can be something that happened 20 years ago. Like it's like through those years, like last 2 3 years, I reflected really a lot about childhood, when I was growing up, and things like that. So it's like there's a lot of memories that come out during those trips, and then it's very interesting to get a new point of view or reanalyze what has happened. It's very interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And When it comes to like the lyricism that's incorporated in Bizarrekult, do you always prefer to have music present before any lyrics come into play, or could the lyrical idea or lyrical concept help guide your hand with regards to how the sound will be?
So it really depends, but I mean, normally it's like, okay, I have the music, and then I align the music with the thoughts, with the text that I have. Just feel like, okay, this is where I would like to speak about this and that. And sometimes it can be like on this new album, one of the tracks is actually I used a poem that I briefly wrote like 15 years ago, which I basically reconsidered, taking the experiences that I had during the last, because it's a track called Charaban. It's like Dear Child. It's a track that it's a poem that I wrote when I had no kids, but was just imagining what it would be, and my expectations. And then 2 years ago, I kind of reconsidered this because I looked, basically I was speaking to myself, back in these days 15 years ago, and where I am now, and these expectations and reality, and this mismatch, and how different the things are, and so on. So you can say that these lyrics or this poem was not initially planned to be a song, right? But then I decided that I would like to dedicate this song, this musical piece, to this particular episode of my life, and incorporate those lyrics specifically into this music.
Do you want the lyricism to be open to interpretation, or do you kind of want to engage the listener into the lyrical context as much as itself? Because when I listen to this album, when you open up from Do Love It Meg and you end with Himalayan Air, I'm not gonna try pronouncing it,
Okay.
but like when you open and end with the album, it's like everything works so well together. The lyricism, whether I know something about it or not. So, like, do you want it to be open to interpretation, or do you want the listener to be as engaged in the lyricism and the meaning as the music itself?
Yeah, you see, that's a very interesting aspect, because when you think of, okay, so most of the lyrics are in Norwegian, right? And then the amount of people that understand the lyrics in Norwegian is, yeah, let's say very small in comparison to people that understand English, or even, I don't know, German or Spanish, right? So then it's like you think, you take into consideration, okay, there will be a language barrier, right? But then this is in a way intentional, because this is a matter of, okay, this is how I think and every day, and this is what I would like to, this I would like the words to sound, and what I would like to say. I would like to say this in this specific language. And then of course it's like when you understand the language, you are much more engaged to some extent, right? Because you hear those words, you get those expressions. And then, like, let's say the people that I know here in Norway or in Scandinavia in general, like in Sweden and Denmark, because the languages are rather similar, they understand a little bit more the context. They are much more reactive to this. At the same time, in order for people to understand a little bit more, I provide on Bandcamp. I provide the English translation for the previous album, and I will provide for new one in due time. So it's like, because people ask what is the context. People are very interested to know what's going on there. So like, and then for me, it's important that people see even at least a little bit of, that, okay, this is not religious or whatever context, but it's very personal, and it's topics. I know sometimes I feel, okay, well, these are the questions that many people can reflect sometimes. I don't know. And then what we do is that we try to do also a little bit help, assistance with in the design, with the booklet, like for CD or for LP. It's like there are artworks that are a little bit aligned with texts, so then the people get a little bit more complete understanding, or like a little bit better engagement, if they, of course, if they're interested into it. Because very often I notice for myself, sometimes you listen to the music, you don't really care about the lyrics, you just like how the voice sounds, right? Especially in very like extreme examples of metal, it's just like, okay, there's somebody screaming there, or squealing, whatever, and you just like how great this sounds. Sometimes you go into lyrics, sometimes you just enjoy how it sounds, whatever you understood or you didn't. So, and then, yeah, it's like, in a way, it's very open to the listener how much they want to engage with the music. If just the music, just the sound, or it all together, or together with the lyrics. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it's up to up to individual person, whatever they want to find in this music.
It's a very interesting point you bring up too, uh, especially because like people who listen to a band like Rammstein, like they don't know any of those words. Or one of my personal favorite bands, Duran Gray, they sing in Japanese. Like I never knew what their lyrics are, and for me, when they're translated, it almost has different meaning because even if you don't understand a word per se, there's something about du hast mich.
Yeah.
Like there's just a hook in the way that that sounds. So I really think it's fascinating where like if you were to post the English translations to the material that you have, I think it's not going to make a listener go, so that's what the song actually meant. I think it's going to bring a different layer of meaning behind it.
Well, some people are very concerned about lyrics, and also, there are people that are concerned about lyrics in black metal a little bit with cautious because there's like some people consider that okay that people can be with extreme ideas or something like this. So, and in this regard, it really helps if somebody wants to double check, what's going on, they can check, or if they want to really get engaged with the lyrics, then I save myself also time that okay I posted it in English. This is my own translation in a way. Then there's no double interpretation. Okay, this is what I actually wanted to say. But then of course there's always, even if you translate it, there's always a matter of sometimes it's like metaphoric or said in a different words, that when you don't know the context of events that are described in a text, it's possible that it doesn't make sense to you, you know.
Definitely.
Whereas when you have been there, it's like, let's say, very, sometimes it's a little bit too personal. And then it's like, let's say, very few people understand what is actually the background of this. But then it's like any way you can get the ideas, the emotions, the feelings, even if you don't know the context completely.
Definitely. And it's not just the context, but it's the emotional elements that are incorporated in here because you mentioned that there's some stuff going on here that goes all the way back to 2010s and like the 20 teens and whatnot. I don't know if this is necessarily maybe a priority in the songwriting process for Bizarrekult, but when you work on something for a long period of time, or you have something that was just kind of like sitting there for a minute and you're just bringing it back into the fold now, does that make it a little bit harder to sort of like capture a moment in a way, or is that not even something you're thinking about in songwriting?
I don't know. For me, it's more like it's like as soon as I like how it sounds, how it looks, it's more like okay, well, I go for it. So I don't really think about I need to capture a moment. It's like as long as I have the right words that I'm happy about. But sometimes, of course, you kind of revise it a lot of the time, especially when it comes to lyrics. And then because normally I first do the demos for the music, then I do the demos for vocals, and then we start recording. And then sometimes, of course, at the process of recording, there's a little bit slight change here and there, or we decide, oh, okay, let's add a little bit more, a few more lines of text because I clearly feel that there's something missing here in this bit. I need to add few lines. Sometimes it's very old addition, very late additions in the process. But anyway, it's like it's not just in haste, but it's more like I feel that here it should be a little bit now, 2, 3 more words, just things like that, or like a very small melody on like with the female vocal, just a very tiny bit, but just like underlying melody that is almost unheard, but it's there.
Definitely. Another question I wanted to ask you is because by going by Bizarre, I ask every band in the realm of black metal this when you have like these pseudonyms or these aliases, going by Bizarre, is that an extension of who Roman is? Is this just an alter ego of Roman? Or do you feel like within your music you kind of like portray somebody or maybe become something that you may not necessarily be in your everyday life?
Well, basically, this Bizarre goes back like, I don't know, more than 20 years ago. This was like the nickname that I choose for like really old internet forums, online games, simply because I felt like, okay, well, I would like to use a word that means that you are a little bit different, you know, a little bit different from everybody else. And yeah, this is how it ended up. Basically, I just kept it.
Well, there's a good essence of rebellion in it, and you just made me interested to see how many new black metal bands with their names, if they got that just from their Xbox Live accounts or something like that.
Well, I mean, it's like, really like early 2000s, like there were no Xboxes. It's more like, playing on local networks and like gaming clubs and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like a really, really old nickname.
Yeah. And being such a prolific artist, because in addition to Bizarre, you also have your history with Dryados. And is the mindset different depending on what project you're playing in at the time, or is there a usual method behind the madness that applies to every project and every song and every album?
Well, you see, the other band that's like really time has passed a long time ago. It was a project with other people, and that was like, yeah, it's like last time I played there was like 2006. So it's like, this is closed chapter in my life basically. So and then I basically started Bizarrekult because I wanted to do something else and just by myself. And then, yeah, this is just what I do. So I'm not involved in any other projects or whatever. So I actually did participated in a record for the friend, just like a guest vocal on one track, just recently. But otherwise, it's like, I'm not interested in, doing having another band or doing something else. It's more like, the most important is to do to say what I would like to say, and that's it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I still don't understand how Phil Anselmo or Mike Patton could be in like 35 different bands. I think that's pretty crazy.
Well, maybe when you have a lot of time, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of time, a lot of time. Um, and when it comes to the songwriting as well, because you mentioned like you seek this inspiration and you explore this in the forests and the wilderness, but like, is there ever a time where inspiration strikes in places where you least expect it as well?
Oh yeah, I mean sometimes it's like, you are in the street and then you have a melody just popping up in the head. I just take out the phone, turn on the audio recording, and just try to just make some, sing a little bit, or write down some lyrics when I'm just on the metro. Sometimes it's very very random. Inspiration can be very random. You don't know how it comes. So once I had like insomnia, and then I'm like, okay, well now it's something weird is going on. I just took a guitar and uh, set down some riffs. It's like, but then it's very difficult to predict where it will end up, because it's like, okay, I do notes on the phone, in the street, in the forest, but it's like there's no guarantee that, okay, this is something that I'm going to do, like to finalize. Sometimes it's just phrases, expressions, some random ideas that I note down. And I mean, it can be the same with the guitar. It can be just a few random chords, progressions, or melody or riff that doesn't have anywhere. I don't know.
How do you know when you are finished with a song?
Well, it's very specific, because it's like when I get like a feeling like, okay, this is, I go for it, and then somehow it all falls in together. I don't. It's very difficult to explain. It's just somehow it works, and I feel, okay, this fits, this fits, this fits. And when I have this idea, it's like, okay, well, I have the structure on guitar, and I already know in my mind how it sounds with the drums. So it's basically, as soon as I have the structure on the guitar, basically, I know what I want to do with drums and all other instruments. And then very often it's also with like, if there's a clean vocal plan, then I already also plan how the melody should be, because even if it's not me who's singing clean vocals, I do these melodies, I plan them, I draft them, and then, okay, well, there we go. Let's do a recording with it.
And because you also tackle many subject matters as well, because like I watched your interview with Season of Mist, where like you were talking about how animal cruelty is also a subject matter that's incorporated in there, but you do tackle the personal as well, and then you have like a Metallica cover that also has different elements. So depending on what the song is about and the emotional essence that you're demonstrating in it, does it resonate with you differently in the final product when you hear it?
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely, because you know sometimes it's very touching, And we've been on tour now in September in Europe with two other Vietnamese bands, the Vegan FI had and Regardless om ton bär. And for me, it was a very, very emotional. It's some parts of the songs where the text is becoming so dense in a way. It's like at one of the shows, I was like almost feeling like if I just don't control my emotions right now, I'll have really problems with performing now, because it just, I felt so overflown by the emotions that I wrote, that I had when I wrote the lyrics. I went so much into it. It was almost, like, yeah, too much in a way. So it's like, especially if it's, I don't know, if it's like songs about relationships, personal relationships, so like, feelings like love and so on, it becomes very, very too much personal. I don't know, at some point. And then when we talk about this song Kong and the King, which is basically against animal violence and violence in general, it was a very interesting moment, because when we played in also on this tour, we played in Hamburg, in Germany, in a club that was a former butchery, former slaughterhouse.
And
So
you
that
and you
was
still
like,
played it.
we played the song there, and it was very interesting and very resonating with the audience, because I explained to people, okay, this is the track that is about this, and we are now playing in a former butcher house. I really appreciate that now this is a music club and not a butcher house anymore. This was like greeted with a huge applause from the audience, like, this is really great. And I felt like, okay, well, now it looks like I did a correct message, because sometimes it's like, even if I, it's like, okay, when I do it for myself, just on my own at home, or like with my family, well, it doesn't matter what is there, right? But as soon as you record, as you put it out, it's in a way exposed to other people, and to others' opinions and reactions. And sometimes you don't care. Sometimes it's like you start thinking like, okay, well, this is like in a way a little bit more social, society-oriented song, right? It's because it becomes from being something personal, that your own attitude, but becoming, okay, now you are almost, I don't know if it's proper to say, almost political in some sense, because this is a political societal issue, right?
Yeah.
And if you see that, okay, well, this resonates with people, okay, that means that, okay, well, I think I did it right. Even if like, okay, I stand by my words, right? This is what I wanted to say. But it's also nice to see that it resonates with the audience, that they also think that this is the right concept to do.
But you mentioned something in this question that really caught my attention when you say that you may have to control your emotions in a way, which,
Yeah.
first of all, that's a very difficult thing to do for anybody to control their emotions, especially today. But, like, do you almost feel that, like, if you control it too much, it could almost suffocate the live presence in a way, and that could almost, like, hinder the organic nature of it, too, if you don't let the emotions just go as freely as possible?
No. I mean, it was like, it's like, it's like I prefer to go like absolutely wild on live setting, completely, out and submerged into lyrics, living it again. It was just like in one of the tracks, I felt like if I keep going like this, I can lose. I wouldn't be able to scream in a way, because it was so heavy. The emotion was so heavy. I was almost crying instead of continuing, because it was too unbearable at some point. And I was like, okay, well, now I need to settle down a little bit.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It's not the end of the world. I still need to finish this song, and I can.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I have two more questions for you. One of them pertaining to the live presence, actually, because is there at all a similar energy that you channel into the live show as you do when you are songwriting in a way, or do you feel that playing live and songwriting are two completely separate art forms altogether?
I think it's a little bit different, because when you are writing, it's like more, you are very like focused, and like, this is how I want it to sound, and this is what I want to say, and so on. When you're live, it's like there's like you are exposed to these other people, the tiny audience, musicians with you, and all that stuff. And then this makes a little bit different experience because, especially if the audience is very engaging, it's very different from you being just alone, writing your stuff, or recording the vocals, writing the tracks. It's like, okay, well, now when I scream in the microphone in the studio, it's like there's nobody there who could react to that and reflect on that, right? And when it's live, it's like it's very engaging when you see that people are on it. It's totally different experience. I wouldn't say that. Yeah,
it's a transfer of energy.
oh yeah, I mean it's such a powerful drive, when the audience is on it. And it's very interesting because we've been playing in different countries, right? And then it's like, let's say, people in France were completely wild, and it was so engaging. I don't know, it was just fantastic.
Definitely.
Just being there, experience this moment with people, and then continue this conversation after the show, just off the show, just people coming to you and discussing what has been. It was, it's a very amazing experience. It's totally different from just interacting with people online.
Of course, 100%. And no matter what the fucking metaverse creates, it'll never take that away from anything. And the final question I wanted to ask you is circling back to the meaning of certain songs, because I've always said that art is life, and when you bring it into the world, it grows, it could develop, it could also eventually die. Do you want every song or the meaning of it to evolve over time as you evolve as an artist, or do you prefer if every song that you create is more or less just a snapshot of who you are at that particular time?
Yeah, I think it's more the second, because what is said is said. It's like, it's in a way carved in stone. So I don't think there's any meaning to go back and, revise something or change it. But at the same time, when I think about live performance, because this is exactly, the thing, like when we finished this first album, put it out, and started recording the second album, without preparing for the shows, without playing the songs, it was like, okay, now this is, closed chapter in a way. But when preparing the songs for live setting, rehearsing it, it's like, okay, we drag it out, and then put it on again in a way. So for me, it was like I was re-experiencing myself, what I has put on a side in a way. This was my feeling, So it's in a way, at one point, it's out there, it's living its own life, people, listening to it and so on. But then when you take it up and you perform it again, it gets a little bit like a second life, but just also again for this specific moment. It's like, let's say you have half an hour show that, okay, for half an hour show, you are experience it again. And then when you turn on the record, it's still the same as it was a year ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's like snapshot that can be live again, and then it becomes a snapshot again.
Definitely. But it will always be slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. Is there just anything else with Bizarrekult you'd like to promote with the release of Den Tapte Krigen? Is there a chance you could finally bring this amazing music to the U.S. one day? We would love to have you guys here.
Thank you so much. It's a really big pleasure to have this conversation, and I really indeed hope that we come to play live in the US. It's like, looking forward, talking a lot about that. I really hope it happens next year.
We hope it does too. This new album is one of the albums to check out for 2023. Thank you so much, everybody. Bizarrekult, Den Tapte Krigen, coming out 2023 via Season of Mist. Be sure to check it out. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.